Hello, welcome to the Dr. Paul Show. I have the special honor of having a patient of mine come on and to join us, and I've known her for a long time, since she was a teenager. I think that even in the early years of my practice was when I first started seeing you, Christina. So welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on. Yeah, it's been a long friendship, a long journey together. So
And I've known your family for also all your family members for quite a while. Um,
exactly.
so tell us, go back in time and tell us when I first started seeing you and what was going on with you at that time, and kind of walk us through that.
Um, God, I was probably 13, 14, something
Yeah.
like that, I would say. Um, so sorry, my cat likes to be a part of every conversation, apparently. Um, I had been struggling with an eating disorder for about 4 years, I would say at that point, since around 10. It hadn't really been treated at all, due to a variety of issues. My dad was also struggling with alcoholism at the time. And we moved from California, or from Texas back to California when I was 14. And I guess it kind of hit a crisis point. More my health started being affected, things like that. Actually, let me go back. I had been treated when I was in Dallas, for the first time. So that's,
You were
yeah, when I was
10 years old, you said?
It started when I was 10, and the first time I got treatment was about 14, 15 in Dallas. It was my dad basically, he finally got treatment for his alcoholism. He went to a program called Sierra Tucson, and he came back and he had met some girls there with eating disorders. And at that point, he realized the health complications that could be involved with it. And so when he came home, it had been kind of like a quiet secret in my house, I guess. Like my parents knew what was happening, but we didn't really address it. When he came home, he decided I need to get help. So he put me in a treatment program in Dallas that was actually just a bunch of girls, outpatient. And unfortunately, it got a lot worse. I think it was one of those things where I didn't really want help, and it became almost like a competition between the girls to see who could be the thinnest, right? It unfortunately, looking back. Um, then I briefly went inpatient at UCLA for a few months, because my electrolytes kept getting to a crisis point and I was not following directions. I was not doing what they were saying to do. I was still throwing up and I was not eating. Um, and then I stopped for a while because I wanted to leave that place so badly. Basically, my dad pulled me out after 3 days because I was like, I can't be here. It's like, I don't want to be. It was a We didn't understand that it was a treatment center that also involved people with more complicated issues like schizophrenia and things like that. And I was just very overwhelmed being in that setting. And so he pulled me out. I stopped for a few months. But then ultimately, then we moved to California and it was complete relapse. I actually did really well there for a while, despite the eating disorder, as far as like my grades and socially, and like had a lot of friends and was doing really well. But I could only do well for so long before the health took over, the electrolytes, and I couldn't function anymore. Went to another treatment program, my end of my sophomore year. I was there for a month. It was in-house. I did stop for a couple months after that, but I relapsed. I think it was so ingrained. It had been with me for so long. And it was like, I felt like my only source of control in my life, right? And so then unfortunately, uh, it's very complicated, but I broke my foot, my teeth started falling apart. So they decided to prescribe me opiates. And I got addicted to those
Now with
at
the
a pretty
with the opiates, so it was given to you for what? For the foot pain or for the teeth, or what was it given? What was the purpose initially of that?
So this is very complicated. So um, when I was 10, my mom was a part of the Oxycontin trials, unfortunately. And so when I was 10, unbeknownst to her, I was in a lot of pain. I'd always had very difficult periods. I got my period when I was 10, and she gave me a pain pill. And I didn't get addicted at 10, but I did take them regularly and I did take them in secret at times. when I was 10. And then it stopped somehow. And then I was prescribed them around 15. And some part of my brain remembered that. It was like all of a sudden, all of the pain and all of the anxiety that I lived with my whole life just disappeared the second I took something. And it felt like magic to me, I'll be honest, like at the time, right? I didn't understand what I was doing and the road I was about to walk down at all. Um, and it just got way out of control. They put me in a thing to detox. I did, and then it somehow I ended up on methadone. I really don't know how I allowed that to happen in retrospect. Like looking back on it, like I don't know. I was not myself. I was like in a different state of mind completely, and I hadn't been myself. I don't know if I'd been myself for a very long time. Anyways, that got really bad. I got up to an obscene amount of methadone because those places should be put out of business, in my opinion, because they don't give a shit about people at all. It's their warehouses. They call it liquid handcuffs for a reason. Um, thank God, thank God, thank God my health deteriorated to the point where when I was around, and that was like honestly, that was then 10 years, um, that I don't really recall very well. Um, thank God my health got to a crisis point around 30, and I was in California and I was living alone. I'd been lying to my parents about school and all these things and totally, but one day I like, no, I wasn't answering. So they, called an ambulance or called friends to come get me. And I went to the hospital and like, just, I think what had happened was that, I'd had a roommate who I think had messed with my methadone doses really badly. And she was, I wasn't in my right mind. So like I think she did something really fucked up to them. So I was like in like I don't even know what happened in retrospect. But anyways, it reached a point where my parents basically picked me up, took me home at the time, NorCal, and they found a doctor. At that point, I just was like, I'll do whatever you say. I just want, I just want to get better. I didn't even know who I was anymore.
Mm.
I was lost. I was completely lost. I couldn't even, my dad would ask me to solve like a simple, like we watch, that show that they have on where people go up and have ideas, Shark Tank. And he asked me to solve a simple math problem for the life of me. My brain couldn't do it. Um, and it was heartbreaking because it was heartbreaking for him. And I thought, like, how have I been? Like, it was just really bad. But they found a doctor willing to put me on. They had to get me off the methadone, so they put me on morphine.
On what?
Um, morphine,
Morphine?
morphine. And something else. I don't even remember. They detoxed me off that. Then I got onto Suboxone. And I decided I wanted to fuck off of it. And so I detoxed myself off of Suboxone. It was incredibly difficult, like the
Very good.
sweats and like, thank God I wasn't living a life. I was just surviving at that point. And thank God I had family that was supporting me and making sure I was okay and safe. Um, and then the miracle happened. I slowly started to find myself again. At first I refused any like antidepressants because I was like, any drug, God, like keep me off of everything under God's green earth. I never want to see a fucking drug again.
Yeah.
And I went back to school. I graduated with 3.93 at UCI. I found friendships again. I started to make a life. Um, I moved to San Francisco, but like it wasn't over, like things like I hadn't really finished healing, I'd found like a safe zone and like I felt like I was kind of like numb almost. Like I used to grow a joke, like I want to be a real girl. Like I didn't feel like I was fully present in my own life, but at
Right.
least I was living. At least I was doing shit. At least I wasn't in my, at least I was getting somewhere. Um, but then when I was in San Francisco, I got a really good job right out of college as a recruiter and got promoted, moved to San Francisco to oversee or to work in legal recruiting. My family at the time was in the North Bay, so it worked out really well. My grandmother had a house in Lafayette. Um, and then I was trying to date and do those things, and something happened with somebody I thought I could trust, and it hit my brain in a way where I couldn't function again. And so at
What?
that point, I said, okay, I was raped, date
Oh,
rape.
I'm sorry. Right. I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah. You told me this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't want to press charges because I felt like it was my fault because I trusted him and I drank with him, But I told him no, like it doesn't really matter in retrospect. It happened Um, and that point, maybe it was a blessing in disguise because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get on antidepressants for the first time in my life or for the first time since all of that. And the funny thing is, like, although I got addicted to drug, I've never been willing to take antidepressants even as a kid. Like, I'd always been nope, nope, nope. And even when they prescribed them to me, I would just not take them. But I didn't know how to get out of bed at that point. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I did, and I got on Prozac. And that was, I think at that time, it was a huge, massive help to just get me back to some sort of stability. Um, so yeah, I did that, and then I fell into um, the tech world, and kind of found my footing in my career. I landed at a company called Sixth Sense. It was one of those unicorns. It was really well timing. I was the second US recruiter. They just raised, millions of dollars. Um, I got to grow with the company. I hired most of the company, got to go to President's Club in Cabo, got promoted to oversee manager customer success, quadrupled my salary, had equity, all of these things. It was amazing. But underneath all of that, like, tech, there's the play hard, work hard culture. I was definitely drinking too much. I was definitely still struggling a lot. Um, and then like Sixth Sense started to like kind of evolve and change as well. And eventually I was let go, because middle management was eliminated within recruiting because they weren't hiring, and they offered me a sales role, but I was like, no, thank you. And so that was another kind of hit. But and going back to like when I was going through, when I was at Sixth Sense those years, I also had another experience where I saw my dog get hit by a car in front of me, which was really tragic. But that also drew me to somebody that I credit a lot of this to. I credit all this to me because I did it. But um, I'd met the founder of Sixth Sense, had been a lady, her best friend. I met a lady named Amy, like in 2020 at a women's empowerment retreat. And at first I thought it was kind of stupid. Some of the stuff, I'm like, I can jump up and down 5 times every morning. Yeah, that's going to make a big difference in my life. Um, but I started doing some of the things and, very slowly at first. And then my dog got hit by a car and I went to Amy just to kind of deal with the tragedy of seeing that. And like I had a weird experience where my dog Sammy, he had passed in front of me and it was horrible. And I had said, I don't want another dog, but my parents, they immediately are like, get, the dog, we're going to fix this. And so they'd been looking and I was like, no, no. But I went to Amy's house and we did Reiki a little. It's like, we imagine Sammy, he's up in the sky. He's okay. You're struggling because you saw that and you loved him, but he's okay. And the second I left her house, I got a text from my aunt with an immediately available French bulldog puppy that was named Lion because we just imagined Sammy as a lion up in the sky. So I immediately flew and got him and got him or whatever. And I started really working with Amy after that. And then again, after I got laid off, because that was a hard experience. And like, that's where I really saw like the inner transformation start to happen. Like I wasn't faking it anymore, like slowly but surely. And I'm not going to say it's constant. Like I still have days and moments where things seem hard, but I now have these tools that I know how to deal with them. And they don't involve drugs. They involve just going inside myself. And yoga, I can't not give yoga. I've also had an incredible journey with yoga over the last 4 years. Like I started getting into it really, really intensely. I started working out like as soon as I started getting better, but really getting into it during COVID and just found this like peace within myself that I didn't know
Mm.
existed. And maybe it always existed, and maybe I just didn't know how to go there. I didn't know how to access it. Um, but it's been like, I don't know, it's like the world looks different now to me than it did before. It looks so much more full of possibility and light. And my biggest thing in life is I just want to help other people, not because everyone has their own journey and all of that. And like you need to go through stuff, right? But like know that they're going to be okay, that they have it within them to be okay, you know?
Mm.
And I've managed to now get off Prozac through, just like working with myself and like I feel better than I did when I was on it.
Mhm.
Because I think I'm becoming more and more who I was always meant to be, and like that to me is like, and the biggest gift is seeing my parents happy.
But
Seeing my parents happy, seeing them see, and it's not just me, my brothers have both been through struggles as well. We all went through it and we all have come through it somehow, like some miracle in the sky, and a lot of hard work and a lot of love. Um, I don't know, and it's just I'm incredibly grateful. at this point in my life for just like feeling good, getting up, like that, like it's something that like I'll never take for granted. Um, because like I think from even from like very young age, like 6, 7, 8, 9, I didn't want to go to school. I
Hmm.
was not I was not a happy kid. And I think I know I had ADHD and that probably contributed to as well. And um, but yeah, it's been crazy and like scary, really, really scary. And there were points in my life where I didn't want to be in this world anymore. But damn, am I glad that I am.
I haven't seen you in a while.
So
You look great, by the way. Um,
thank you.
so take us back to the early days when you were because we haven't talked a lot about eating disorders on the show yet. Um,
Yeah.
tell us what got you into doing that. Was it because it happens a lot with young women, especially teenagers or preteen. Tell us about what got you into that. I mean, I think maybe you started with anorexia, moved into bulimia, or had a mixture of both. But yeah, tell us about that and that struggle a little bit more.
Yeah, I think in my case it was a perfect storm. Um, I was 10 when I got my period, which is very young to get your period. Um, I had been teased about my weight a little bit. I was never fat. I was a little chubby, but I remember very clearly um, in fifth grade when a teacher, and looking back on this, I'm like, this was not, I think it was a little hard for kids, but she read a story in front of the class about a boy who was teased because he was overweight. And then he one day got up and shot himself in front of the class, right? And so I remember walking to lunch after that. And you know how you walk in the line to lunch, and I was the last one. And this boy turned around and he goes, Tina, you're fat, but don't go kill yourself over it. And like that one comment, like, not that that was that one comment. I also, my dad, like, and my parents, like, they always wanted the best for me. They would have done anything in the world for me. However, like, my dad had some alcohol issues, and when he was drinking, he made a few comments that to me when I was young,
About
like, why are you so
your weight.
about my weight? My mom had always been extremely, extremely weight oriented. She rarely ate meals with us when I was a kid. She'd cook and then she'd get up and do something else while we were eating. She always had just strange, admittedly strange eating habits. She ate chicken and apples for a year, like she told me all the time. Um, my grandmother, I think at one point told her to put me on a diet when I was like 6 and I was like a little chubby and it came through in how she interacted with me and my brother and I saw that and I think that, then I also lived in a very when I was 10, we lived in an area called University Highland Park in Dallas and it was very wealthy and very like looks oriented and like, you're supposed to look a certain way. Everyone, girls went to charm school. It was very, very like that. And then I don't remember like the first time I did it, to be honest with you. I remember I might have seen something on like a talk show or something. But for me, the bulimia was first. That's what started it. Um, I remember being like a 10 at a like McDonald's restroom and thrown up in a McDonald's restroom.
Hmm.
Um, I remember that very soon after I started, I didn't have to make myself. I don't know why that is and like why my body did that, but it would just happen, after I ate. Um, and so by the time I got treatment, it was like my body's like natural like thing. Like it just felt like it was what's supposed to happen, which I know is completely screwed up, but that's how it felt by the time I got treatment. It was so ingrained. And I felt like it was my identity, I guess. Um, and
Hmm.
I got like obsessed with it. Like it control, in a very chaotic at times family. Um, and I thought if I looked a certain way, everything would be okay. And like that's not true, obviously, but in my head, you're also I think social media has now, but even that back then it was more magazines and TV, but now I'm like, I feel so bad for kids and girls. Um, that are just constantly inundated with these images of perfection that don't exist. Um, and it just, and then what happened is at 14, when they finally got me treatment, the way that they decided to treat people was they would make you sit with your parents after you ate, so you couldn't throw up, right? And so I'm like, okay, cool, I'll stop eating then. And I did.
Yeah.
And I lost 20 pounds like with the first month of treatment I had eating disorders. I was extremely stubborn and I thought I knew what I was doing. And I didn't. But
Yeah.
I thought I was.
Yeah, like like you said, the control thing. Sometimes when you like it's a sense of empowerment and control that you have, and you don't want to give up the
Yeah,
control. It's kind of an obsessive, kind of I call it like an obsessive compulsive disorder, really around food, around weight, around wanting to look a certain way, and so
and the binging and the purging, there's an addiction there with that,
yeah,
like the being able to eat whatever. I remember being told, you can eat whatever you want, right? And there was something about that was like, yeah, like I have a secret that I can do you know what I mean? I always had this, and my dad's like this too. I can do what I want somehow and get away with it,
yeah.
you know? Which is not always true. I still have a little bit of it in me though, like, but I now know how to tailor it and be like, because I can rationalize in my head a lot when I want something,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did. I remember yeah, I just pretty much like not like, I don't want to say lost my mind, but yeah, I kind of lost my mind. Like, like
Yeah.
I
It's a
was so young, you know?
it's a very complex disorder. Like I said, early on in my practice, I was always really interested in mental health issues, and so even because I started as a family doctor, but I started getting a reputation, because I was so interested, and then I met with there's a psychologist and nutritionist I worked with at the time. And then they started sending me patients with eating disorders. So I got a lot of experience early in my practice with it. And it's a very complex issue because there's genetic factors, because I know with your family history, with alcoholism with your dad and with your mom and your brothers. And, so I know there's some genetics going on. And then, but a lot of times with the eating disorders, it's the parents or the siblings making a comment, or like a father like pinching the sides, hey, a little bit extra, or making a comment about the body and that's a very powerful thing that coming from a man in your life, like a father or a brother, And so it's a complex thing because there's so many factors involved with eating disorders, and that's why it's so hard to break the cycle. And then, like you said, it becomes competition when you go inpatient with other girls. And I have a whole
Yeah.
my new book, The Current Protocol. I have a whole chapter on eating disorders. And my first books also I talk about it. But yeah, I'm glad you got out of it because it's a very, very difficult thing to resolve. Extremely difficult.
So part of the story is it came back. I stopped when I got off all the drugs, right? And then I went back to school and it came back. I relapsed, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Um, and I don't know completely how I stopped for good. I started getting heart palpitations when I was studying for classes.
Mm.
And I realized I didn't want my parents coming and finding me dead. And I was like, okay, like this is it. Like this is it. And somehow I stopped.
Well,
And since
with
I've
your,
never,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and since then, like I've never done it on purpose again. I still have that like thing. So sometimes if my stomach's upset, like it's still, which is kind of weird. I don't know why. I don't know if that'll ever go away. But what were you gonna say?
Yeah, there's always there's always going to be that little bit in the back of your mind about, it's hard to completely resolve it, but the fact that you can keep it under control, not let it control you. But um, what was I going to say before I lost my train of thought? So, uh, so anyway, um, yeah, it's difficult because and then nowadays too, social media, like you said, makes everything worse because competition going on, and it's very common. back then, like when you were that age, they didn't have social media, but magazines, rail thin models, and that's what women, girls would look at and say, well, that's what I want to be like that model. And so that's why, and it's a very difficult. And what I was going to say is that when you said mention your electrolytes, it's well, Karen Carpenter is the most famous example of someone who died of it. But yeah, it can kill people because of the electrolyte issue, because of starvation, and even the binging and purging. It throws your electrolytes off, and that can affect your heart and actually kill you. And I've seen it happen early in my career. There was a girl who I just had seen maybe like one time, and she was like 60 pounds.
Oh
Um,
God.
yeah, and she came in, and my nurse basically, she saw her and checked her in the room, and she went to the bathroom and she threw up. She said because it was so disturbing to her to see her that she got sick from
Oh,
it.
it's
Not
horrible.
throwing up because you blame it, but throwing up because of seeing this girl and how she looked, and it was horrible. And anyways, she ended up going inpatient, but she ended up like dying. Even she died it when she was inpatient, because of her electrolyte imbalances and her heart stopped. So yeah, so it's a serious issue, and then in my new book, like I said, with a chapter I talk about anorexia, I talk about bulimia, and I talk about binge eating disorder. So binge eating disorder is also a huge issue nowadays. People who don't do binge and purge, they binge and binge and binge, and they don't purge or anything. They just get very, very overweight, and that's also extremely unhealthy. So, but it's also all of the different types of eating disorders are all based on the same, kind of obsessive compulsive thinking about the body and the shape, and women say, well, my hip is a little bit big over here. So women will kind of obsess over different parts of the body that they want, they don't like in the mirror. But it's extremely irrational, obviously, and it's very addictive too, because it gives you a sense of power and control. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I've finally come to a place where I feel good about like, I feel strong. And to me, that's more important than anything else. I feel capable. Like I teach hot yoga, you know?
yeah.
Um, so to me, I've realized that and I want to have a baby and like I want my body to be a safe place and a healthy place for that baby. And like I don't even know what I weigh. I don't weigh myself. I refuse to weigh myself. Um,
Yeah,
because I doesn't
that's the best for you is not to weigh
doesn't
yourself.
matter. I'm healthy. Like I eat well.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a sweet tooth, but I don't drink very much anymore. I'll have an occasional glass of wine, and
Hmm.
I take care of myself, and like that to me is more important than I look good, and I like that I look good, but it's a reflection of. It reminds me of like people they look better when they're happier. Like I look at pictures of myself during all of that when I thought I looked great because I was thin. And I looked like shit. My face looked like shit. I didn't look happy.
Yeah.
Like it's shocking to me that I thought that it was bloated. Like
Right.
it's shocking to me that I thought that was a good look. Like,
Yeah.
but like your brain, like you said, your brain plays insane tricks on you. And like the electrolyte thing, when I was in college, I blacked out in the middle of a 200 person class. It's not a good experience. Woke up with an ambulance and the professor standing over me.
Wow.
Um, because of my electrolytes, I suppose, and then I refused to go to the hospital, which was a repetitive thing. That happens like 5 or 6 times. There were like seizures of some sort, but that it was probably electrolyte related. But thank God, like somehow, and that's why like sometimes I feel like I used to have a little bit of survivor's guilt because I'm like, how the fuck am I alive? If there wasn't like I never do things halfway. I threw up 25 times a day. Like
Right.
I don't understand how electrolytes survived, right? Like in reality. And like that's why I think like I have to lean into that there's a reason that I
Right.
survived, that I'm here for a reason to help other people, to live the best life I can,
Yeah.
to make my family happy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm here for a reason because like other people aren't, and like I
Yeah.
have to honor them, the fact that they didn't get the chance. Because how many freaking chances did I get? I got an insane number of chances, like more chances than anyone usually gets in a lifetime,
Right.
you know? And like a lot of people don't get that. Like
Right.
even Karen Carpenter, like I followed that story very closely. She had just checked out of getting out of some kind of rehab or some kind of wellness thing when she
Right.
died. And it's so sad. And I won't do that to my
Yeah.
family. That's why relapse is never an option for me because I will never, in my right mind, the mind I have now, I will never do that to my family or myself or my boyfriend
Right.
or this world or God for crying out loud. Like, how much respect do I have for whatever power kept me here on some level when
Right.
even when I didn't want to be, you know?
Right. Right.
Like, and that's why like I really truly believe in a higher power more than I ever have before in my life. Because when in the darkest moments of my life, like I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at my grandma. I was angry at everyone for having allowed me to go down this path. I'm like, who the fuck allowed this? I was a child. Like, who allowed this to happen to me?
Yeah.
But now I realize like it happened for a reason. Whatever that reason was, maybe it's just to create like some kind of place in this world for people, that feel lost.
I've had other
So I
patients
don't know.
come on and tell me the same thing. There's one, Samantha, actually, who's really struggled with addiction. And we're going to actually, the TV network wants us to do a documentary on her. So we're actually going to do like a 2 or 3 hour documentary on her, and her struggles. But yeah, what you said before, when you looked at old pictures, see at the time, if you looked at yourself, you'd be like, oh, I need to lose more weight, or I need, you wouldn't see. The thing is, other people see things that different than you see in yourself. That's the part of the eating disorder. And when I told you, but and because I haven't seen you in a long time, because you're back east now and I'm here, I haven't seen you in a long time. And when I said you look great, that's the compliment, because you look super healthy. I know
Yeah.
I've been talking to you previous appointments. You're happy, and you got a great guy in your life, which is great. And you got a great therapist, Amy Coget. So Coget is her last name. I did a show with her, talking to her also, and about her book and about happiness, and she was great guest too, and I know she's helped you a lot. So
Yeah, and I think it's the thing about it is like it's taking back control of what you can control. You
yeah,
can control getting up every morning and saying this is the happiest day of my life. And it might feel stupid, but it's science.
yeah,
Like it's science. Brain, we know this. Like we've done the research, we understand how our brains work. And you might feel like an idiot doing, but like I tell my clients this all the time because I'm a career consultant. Do the Superman stance for an interview. Like I swear to God, it sounds stupid, and I'm not saying don't just do that and don't prep. Of course, prep, guys, but like
yeah,
it does something to your brain, and confidence is everything in life, right?
yeah.
And like so like I believe it, and I jump up and down when I feel like a dip in energy sometimes, just because I need that. Like it's like free drugs.
Right,
Use your brain.
right,
It's like when I go to yoga, I get all the endorphins and the rush or whatever, and like I feel like I can do anything, and like that's a more real and better feeling than any high I had from an opiate.
yeah, yeah. Fantastic.
But so
You're
the struggle
you're
is real.
you're on a natural high, which is a healthy high. Because you're endorphins, and you're exercising, you're healthy, you're eating healthy. So that's why, I mean, you've discovered that healthy is you, which is fantastic for me to see as a doctor. I mean, I love to see patients thriving like you are, and so
Thank you.
well, we really appreciate having you come on and telling us your story, and I loved, yeah, maybe I'd love to hear more good news about what's going on and having a kid. I'm excited about that too.
Me
So,
too. Yeah. Got some eggs frozen too from
I know you did.
my last job. Paid for the whole thing.
Yeah,
The tech world.
uh, right, exactly. Well, thank you for coming on, Christina.
So
I appreciate it so much.
thank you for having me.
Okay, you take care.
You too.